Hi, camera.
Yo.
I think we're
Hello, world.
are we are we are we
There you
live?
go.
Yeah, we're live. We are live. Yeah, there we are. Oh, Instagram looks terrible.
Oh, does it?
Oh, it does. Yeah, half a heads. I don't know what
Half
happened
our
there.
heads.
Yeah,
So I should
sorry
make
guys
it.
for the vertical stream. It is looking terrible for anybody who's watching, and I don't know how to fix it.
See if
Oh,
I can.
I see what you're talking about. I see.
Yes,
Wait, wait,
we'll have to duck down. Duck down there. Hello, everybody.
Go technology.
Hey!
Yes.
My legs bleeding up like that.
I do not know how to fix this. Anyway, hello and welcome to the Permaculture Vine podcast, live with Permaculture Canada and special guest Jeremy Fellows. Welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. This is very exciting.
Yeah,
Yes. So good for you.
thanks for joining us. Just do a quick round of intros. I'm Cormac, founder of Vine Permaculture and the host tonight. Lindsay, Humon, do you just want to go next there?
Sure, I'm Lindsay Brandon from Permaculture Canada, reporting from Ometepe, Nicaragua.
And I'm Human with Cultured Art, also in the same spot.
And I'm Jeremy Fellows, live here from Lake Atitlan, Guatemala, with my permaculture project, Granja Siquin, and another project we'll be talking about today called Aguasana.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, guys. Jeremy, just want to give us a bit more of an intro for yourself since you're new here for the audience.
Well, yeah, sure. So where do I begin? I'm originally from Massachusetts, the cold north, especially cold right now. And I made my way after graduation down to this beautiful lake and been here ever since, about 13, going on 14 years. In that time, after sort of studying permaculture in college, really getting into it, I started to sort of cut my teeth down here, building all sorts of fun projects, volunteering a bit, and but really getting involved in building like really kind of like permanent water systems, water catchment systems, partly because of the lack of rainfall, or sort of the intermittent rainfall, as in like, you know, part of the year there's no water at all, and then it rains for 6 months. So it's like 6 months on, 6 months off. It really kind of like opened up a lot of opportunities to try to build systems that can kind of moderate the lack of water for certain times of year. So it's been really interesting working on that. And I think living in this climate has really gotten me involved in that kind of work, right? And so fast forward time, me and my business partner, Neil Hagerty, which you guys know, I'm sure people out there know as well, with his project, his sort of online platform, Creasol. Before he started all that, him and I built Granja Siquin, this permaculture farm that's still going in the valley of Sununa here on Lake Atitlan. And so we spent many years building that, and it's still a work in progress, as I'm sure Lindsay and Human noticed. But it's our little baby. We have a lot of fun with it. It's our hub where we get a lot of stuff done, meet a lot of people, make projects happen. Since building that place, I've been very focused on, once again, sort of like these sort of water-focused projects. Now as well, more focused again on creating decentralized water filtration systems. Partly because we're seeing a sort of drastic effect of population increase on the health of this beautiful body of water that I'm looking at right now as I'm talking to you guys. I'll actually see if I can show everyone at home, even though the camera's cut off a little bit. There she is.
Yeah, you got such an amazing view from your place. It's beautiful.
Quite the wild.
Yeah. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of what's going on. I'm still working on these projects, and there's new ones popping up every day, and it's super fun. I kind of like call this project kind of focus agua sana, right? And once again, it's the idea of like sort of creating decentralized or community-based water filtration projects, but also water use projects. Because I mentioned before, we've got this sort of two-pronged kind of situation going on where there's no treatment for the wastewater coming out and it's going right into the lake. But you're also dealing with people in places that have very limited water access in different places. So it's kind of like one of those aha kind of moments, like ding, people don't quite know how to, or they don't know that they can reuse the water. They just think it's nasty stuff you should throw down into the gully and get rid of. And the munis don't have the resources or aren't willing to commit resources to working on this stuff. And so, yeah, there needs to be some kind of intervention on a certain level to help this process along, right?
Yeah, and you've definitely done that. You've definitely come up with some pretty substantial models that can be replicated. This is something that we've seen a lot as we've gone through our Central America travels over the past few months, is this massive expansion of population in areas where the infrastructure can't support that. And I think that you've come up with a pretty outstanding solution for this, like on a small scale in an urban environment. And I love how you have that community aspect into it. So I'm wondering if maybe you can highlight that example of, how are you working with somebody with, say, a home and their gray water, and what have you come up with in terms of solutions for your individual private homeowners?
Yeah, those projects are always a bit funner. People are just people like individual homeowners tend to really care, and they want to reuse that water, and the cleaner we get the water means the more things you can use it for, basically. I mean, there's aspects of it. If water is quite turbid and dirty, it can smell really bad. It could also harbor diseases and many other things. So people really want to reuse their wastewater, but for good reason, they're a bit wary about it, right? Because it can harbor E. coli and many other harmful, like human-borne diseases. And so with single family units, it's pretty fun because you usually have enough space to get the water to interact, right? It's that same idea of like create edge space, right? Use edge and value marginal resources like wastewater. And the way we do that is by getting the water to interact with different particle sizes, creating gravel filtration and other systems like that. But we also combine it with plant systems. And you guys, maybe a lot of people at home might be aware of how these kind of processes work, but we basically are creating wetlands or artificial wetlands. And we do it using a bog filter method where we actually send the water from a grease trap or a similar method. Actually, we just, I don't know if you guys saw in the video for our last permaculture course, Lindsay, the mycelial filter and the activated carbon filters that we just made out of buckets with holes in them that the water goes through first. Or you could use a grease trap, any of these kind of things. And basically then would go into pipes that go into the bottom of a sort of a pool, basically. That pool, and by a pool I mean that water can't escape from some kind of recessed area. And in that pool, the water wells up from below and overflows at a certain pipe at the height that you want it to, just below maybe the top lip of this pool area that we'll say, and basically as the water pushes its way up through from the very bottom of this receptacle, like, you know, the example we have at the farm that Lindsay and Human were helping us with is a sort of stone and mortar pool, like a retaining wall that goes all the way around, and a cement base so that water holds inside of it. And this one is just above ground, and because we're on a slope, it kind of acts as like a sort of terrace, you know, and basically it holds water, and the water comes up and from the bottom of this pool, and as it goes up through, it has different size gravel that it passes through. First is like really loose stuff, and as it goes up, it starts to go through finer and finer material. And as it does this, there's anaerobic bacteria that are living on the edge or the surface area of the stone, gravel, and eventually sand that are very effective at sort of flocculating or grabbing out of solution all these sort of charged, you know, all this sort of interacting with this water that's got ionic or dissolved particles of different nutrients, basically, that's in the soaps and the food waste, and definitely some of the grease particles that are coming through that. And as it does that, it starts to flocculate, digest, and deposit all that material in the form of sludge at the bottom of the tank, right? And so this process is very effective. I mean, most biodigesters, which is another project we work on, is prefabricated systems for single use or single household kind of systems, and many other systems like this, they behave in the same way. It's like get the water moving through different kinds of particles that, you know, house different kinds of bacteria that can really start to digest and sort of create enzymes that break all the stuff down and get it to settle out. And as we get all the material to settle out, that's where the plants come in. And the plants basically live just above the overflow of the system. We put in a fabric. In our system, we use this kind of technique where we actually put soil over the bed, right? And it's kind of cool because if you guys can picture this process, the water's sitting in there pooling. It overflows where there's this tube that brings it to a leach field, or kind of, and you could actually bring it into other parts of the system. You could clean the water even more. But generally speaking, we use this bog filter or artificial wetland system not only to clean the water, but also create a very productive garden bed. Not necessarily for food, but other things, or maybe just aesthetic. But the cool thing about it is these plants get to soak up all this amazing mud or sludge that's sitting at the bottom, and they absolutely love it. When you design systems where there's a soil level above the water, just above the water level, not only are allowed to kind of adapt the system to work with pretty much any kind of plants you want, not just aquatic plants, because they'll be happy to send their roots down in to drink and sort of digest and pull up all this nutrient sitting at the bottom. But then they have roots that are exposed to oxygen above, and they can actually moderate that, and they're very happy to. If anyone at home knows much about hydroponic systems, a lot of them work much in the same way. You don't necessarily need water circulating. All you need to make sure is that the plants have access to oxygen and water, right? And so when we have the soil level above that, and we allow the plants to send their roots down into the gravel and sand and all the way down to the very bottom of the system, they get to grow very efficiently, and they are actually able to pretty much clean up all the sludge as it starts to develop in the bottom. And so, you know, there's a lot of really cool things happening with this. One, you don't have to clean the sludge out of the bottom of this tank. It's actually being incorporated and digested, incorporated back into the vegetative matter that's growing up through the system and out, right? So that's one thing. Two, you don't have to fertilize the plants that are going into these systems. Three, you don't even have to water these gardens because they're receiving water from below. It's wicking up through, if anyone knows much about wicking beds, right? And so none of this is new technology, but it might be new to you. or anyone else that's using it. And there's different ways to apply it. But thinking about getting ways for plants to interact with the wastewater in different methods, and finding out plants that are climate appropriate and culturally appropriate to where you're working, and figuring out what size systems you can make and how can you apply it to a landscape or a design where it's super functional, right? Instead of just being like, let's put a treatment plant over there. Treatment plants are very mechanical. They use a lot of energy. They require a lot of maintenance. And they tend to lose funding eventually. Something breaks and no one's there to foot the bill, and then they just sit there and rust. Systems that are incorporated into a landscape and have value besides just cleaning the water, but they actually, people incorporate them into their lifestyles. It takes on a whole nother function besides just being a way to clean water. And so that's what we're focused on with this Aguasana project. And so the example that I'm giving you guys that Lindsay asked about is just one of many, you know. There's ways to apply this same sort of thought process to an agroforestry project where you have wastewater nearby. Maybe you can pump it into a bamboo production area and start to reap some functional yields out of that, like construction materials, starting a whole business around that. And so for us on this, where we live here, we really want to flip the script about this waste problem that we have. And it's a big problem. And the only way to get it to move forward is to people to start like seeing it as potentially an opportunity, right? Instead of it being sort of humanitarian projects coming in and trying to fix everything, which they won't, they don't, and they won't. We want people to see it like, oh, just by doing a couple simple things, we can convert this into an irrigation system that feeds a whole production area, that invigorates my agroforestry project doing coffee, or once again, bamboo, or any number of different things that grow on marginal landscapes where, you know, wastewater and unfortunately trash and other things get dumped, right? So in a nutshell, that's, you know, I think I rambled a little bit, but like, that's kind of like the scope of what we're doing with this. It's not just for households. It's not just for private owners that can afford to do this kind of work. We're, you know, we're working in different sectors, so targeting a similar kind of threat or issue.
Yeah, and I like how you expand on, you know, the use of gray water. That's a common question that comes up a lot, is people are like, oh, what am I going to do with this? So I think most people, it's like the go-to is pollinator gardens, you know, or something aesthetic, you know, they're not food. But I like that addition of like industrial scale housing materials and things like that. Like, why not? So, yeah.
Yeah, as it would be weird, right? Like, yeah, totally. I think you can use it for, and you know, I was kind of hinting at it earlier, but it's like, you know, imagine if you used one of these gray water gardens, and then, but you're overflowing it back into another system that can purify it more and provide oxygenation and can send it through another thing. And maybe, you know, as it meanders its way down through a whole system, it could get to the point where, yes, you could use it actually to irrigate, you know, actual food production or tender food production. You know, usually you go for fruits, perennial or like tree type species first, but there's no reason why you couldn't go as far as actually using it to grow veggies and other things like that as well. And that is kind of like a big goal of ours, is working in like more arid regions where we don't want to just like reuse the water to the point where it's not harmful to the environment, but to the point where people can actually sustain themselves off of it, subsistence wise, or maybe even market production style. You know, there's like some NGOs that are trying to get, you know, people to start growing their own gardens again and stuff like that. But then the muni comes in and goes, hey, you guys are using way too much water. That water is only for drinking. Meanwhile, and washing your clothes. Meanwhile, people are just dumping so much of this, like, not super dirty water. I mean, the wash water and all that, it's really not the worst thing or the hardest thing to treat to a functional or appropriate level, right? And that's kind of where we're looking is in areas like that. But yeah, correct.
Cormac, Human, you got questions? I don't want to keep talking.
Oh, you walk away.
Yeah.
I got lots of questions. Got to give other people a chance.
Yeah, no, it just got me thinking that like I'm here in Northern Ireland, and we have actually problems with water. With that when new basically new estates are built or new housing is built, that the water system's already at capacity, and then they say they don't give planning. They say no, there's no water infrastructure to treat the water or even supply you water. But then what happens is it gets pushed through planning because it's a political issue. So then for me here, I'm trying to think, well, the only way to actually ease pressure is to do it yourself, because these things, the bureaucracy involved and is quite a lot. It's quite it's restrictive here, but the water system is at capacity. Talking to someone on water here, and they say that so these solutions are needed here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like there isn't enough water, right? It's just that it's not being used appropriately. Much like food scarcity, it's just like there's not enough distribution, generally speaking, and there's not smart, resource use being applied, generally speaking. And as you were saying, Carmen, it has a lot to do with infrastructure and how these bylaws work and how restrictive they can actually. Ironically, the restrictions can actually choke up the the actual resource itself in some cases. And just trying to get this water as far, treat it to an admissible level and then get it as far away as possible tends to be how government and municipal systems tend to treat these situations. And so it's a big challenge to go against that in a lot of ways. Luckily in Guatemala, you can kind of just go at it because no one's really doing much better anyways, which for me is kind of an opportunity because I work with engineers and people that really are dedicated to studying this stuff. And I try to ask the right questions, right? Try to get, down to what's the best solution? What are the most appropriate designs to deal with this specific situation? And once again, every single site that we walk onto, every single household unit is geographically, culturally, and sort of resource specific, right? And it really, looking at those three kind of factors, your design could change quite wildly. And we do use a lot of the same components as we go through it, using these biofilters or plant filter systems on some level tends to be our go-to. But what materials do you use? How is it incorporated into the landscape? How big does it need to be? What pre-treatments you use? And what can we do with the water afterwards? Those are all tend to differ wildly as you go through this kind of work, right?
Yeah, I also seen a system recently where so the human waste went into a septic tank, and then that was pumped uphill, and then that went through a 3 filter system, and then that was put through because it was by the sea, it needed treated. It couldn't be pumped to a station to get treated, so they actually had this on-site system. They filter the water, and then it ran the end of the river out to the sea. So it was an interesting system. It was the first time I'd seen something like that.
Yeah, and you see a lot of these kind of innovative systems near the sea or bodies of water where there are environmental kind of laws in place that tell you well, if you want to build something that is if you want to build facilities of any kind here, you need to do this, that, or the other thing to actually get that done. And so you end up seeing these really interesting systems. I used to work in areas on bays, and we would use incinerators a lot. So dry toilets, but incineration style. which is kind of interesting actually. Is a very efficient way to deal with black water. But you know, we also deal with black water quite a lot with what we're working with, and usually we're not quite so close to the ocean as what you were mentioning, Cormac. But there are a lot of cases right here on the lake. You got people right up against the water, and they're not really doing their part. And a lot of the environmental groups tend to just get paid off, and they don't really investigate everyone as much as they should. And so these are going to, over time, these kind of problems are going to start to accumulate here. And one of our big concerns with this lake specifically is that it accumulates. It doesn't have any direct inflows or outflows, i.e. there's no rivers going in or rivers leaving. And so all the water just accumulates through precipitation and some smaller rivers that dump out into here, but the water is not going out anywhere, right? So it all just builds up inside of it like a massive puddle. It's a lot more beautiful than what a massive puddle sounds like, but it's extremely deep, over 300 meters deep, and basically it's a caldera of a mega volcano, and the rest of the area around the lake is volcanically active, and there's many dormant volcanoes sort of in line with it. You can see these three ones right here. So the lake itself was one that was 5 to 10 times these guys right here, which already look massive. And it fell in. It sort of fell in on itself as all the material got expelled out of it, and formed this absolutely humongous caldera. Look, I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's a volcano erupting way off in the distance there. Maybe people on social media can't really see that, but currently there is a volcano erupting just across the way, but very far away.
If you can see it, it's not far.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
If you can see a volcano, that's too close.
We're like basically living on one right now.
It's true, yeah. It's actually coming out of it all.
We're totally cuckoo, huh? What are we doing out here? But
just kind of curious, coming back to what you were saying earlier about the standard procedure in urban areas where they want to take it to these big facilities and then process it in this big facility, usually using chemicals and stuff, until something breaks. And then at that point, it just becomes this rusty thing people won't reinvest into. So the question I'm building up to on that is, say we get to a space where they want to reconcile this kind of scenario. If you were to step into one of these places that's been basically empty or derelict, is no longer doing its job, and they wanted it turned into something you've created, how would you go about changing the structure of this massive rusting compound?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'll use the same go-to response as me and Lindsay usually do. It depends, human. Depends on a lot of things. But there's one way to think about it. A lot of times these systems fail because they're sort of centralizing everything into one place, right? And it's like you're dealing with so much volume. On a sort of industrial scale, it makes sense in terms of cost efficiency to build things where you can treat everything in one fell swoop, right? And it does tend to work in places that are developed and have the funding channels all lined up and everything's good to go. But when you're dealing with places where there's power outages all the time, when you've got these sort of not necessarily like reliable funding sources, maybe a mayorship changes or something like that, that can cause serious problems. And partly because when we do this thing of like centralizing all this waste, we tend to bring it farther downhill and closer to the place you don't want it to be going in more concentrated amounts and higher volumes. And then when it doesn't work, you've actually made the problem worse, right? And that's like the first thing we try to do with the design is do no harm or don't make things worse. And so when you look at industrial engineering, you're kind of like, are you guys thinking about that first principle when you're building these kind of things? Because you're building a ticking time bomb. If something happens and this doesn't work anymore. So when we see these situations, the first thing you do is, okay, let's reverse engineer this, or let's go back uphill and see where they decided to put all of these pipes into one massive pipe and say, all right, can we actually redirect all this stuff and bring it back out farther away from its sink and find areas where we can utilize marginal landscapes. This is my big thing, is like, generally speaking, especially where we live, there's like people live higher up on hills, and there's a lot of open places out. Everyone lives kind of close together in their neighborhoods, and then you've got these big open areas where maybe they're growing coffee, or maybe they're not growing much at all. And you know, the people that have the land can't necessarily use it because it's either too steep or too dry, or many other factors. And so we come in, we say, okay, we'd like to utilize this landscape to redirect some of this water that is currently just going down the hill, or is kind of affecting some of the neighbors down the way with all this nasty water that's stagnating, or as you say, Human, maybe we're like, okay, we need to actually relieve some of the excess water that's going into this one big channel that's moving downhill, like going way too close to the lake. And so we tend to like separate out, and you know, the more work I do on this, the farther I separate everything out. Like sometimes we'll go in and separate individual households and just work with biodigesters and build them their own simple terrace gardens where they can grow different forest crops. And maybe we set up an orchard for them where the water that we've cleaned is moving in, and we're using it to passively irrigate perennial forest systems. Like, I mean, if they want to grow something specific like citrus, you know, it's like, heck yeah, let's do it. If they want to plant a new crop of coffee so that the family can grow, you know, work on that, it's like, let's do that. And basically, the more work I do, the closer I want to get to each individual household and be like, what do you guys want to, you know, what kind of systems, you know, what would you like to do with this landscape that's currently, you know, either covered in trash or not being managed, or, you know, just seems unusable, and let's turn it into something amazing. And, you know, we almost like paint the picture like that instead of like, oh, you're polluting the lake, oh, don't do this. We say, like, you know, what do you want to do with this piece of land, right? And then so we work towards what they actually want, and in the process we start incorporating the wastewater and say, okay, well, in order to do that, we actually need to take this water and we need to treat it a little bit. And actually, when we do that, we're going to build terraces and access ways and areas for you to plant new crops in. And in order to do that, we need to create irrigation. And so we're going to utilize some of this water to put this in. And they start going, oh, cool, look at that. And without even having a direct conversation, you're basically getting people to take responsibility for their own water, but through a different conversation. Instead of being like, this is bad, you need to fix this. It's more like, hey, why don't you do that? It's way better. You know, like, let's build something out of it. I went on a tangent again, but I don't know if did I answer your question, Human?
Kind of, sort of. I was initially going to ask the question in a different way, in that would you look further up the pipe to start dealing with the solution, or figure out how to deal with the solution right at the factory? And it sounds like you like going up the pipe.
Yeah, I would not want to deal. You can't deal with problems where they surface from, right? We can't deal with emergent problems, you know, where we're seeing them pop up. We need to look back up the waste stream. Just like when we talk about the sort of iceberg model, it's like we're looking deeper into the human psychology. And as we go farther up the waste stream, it's sort of, we're going into the sort of the branches of a tree, and we're seeing, where is all of this waste coming from? And like I said before, the closer we go, the more intimate we get with the problem itself, and seeing why it's actually happening in the first place. And once we understand it on its most sort of radical or intimate level, we tend to see problems as opportunities, right? So that's kind of the wisdom behind doing a lot of this work, is like, it's like trying to deal with that much water in a factory is insane. Like you can only deal with it the same way the engineers were dealing with it, basically. And you just need to turn it into a different form, make it smaller, more bite-sized, right? Slow and small solutions, as we all know, we chime on about. But yeah, long story short, yes, that's how we would deal with it in my sort of way of looking at a human.
All right.
Yeah, I like that because basically now the saving the lake's like a byproduct, not actually the problem. And then that avoids the whole political thing of it. Is like so here that one company will get paid to deal with all the waste. So that's a multi-million-dollar contract, and you can't go and tell them, oh, by the way, you're doing it wrong. But if you go to the source and actually show benefit, and then just the company won't get that wasted process anymore, which you're not wasting your time shouting at a company or shouting at politicians. You're just going, right, well, here, deal with your own waste, and here's the benefits.
Yeah, grassroots approach. Correct, Cormac. That's you have to defund the corporations somehow. I mean, you're just giving them all this fodder, and of course they're sort of like, well, no one else is dealing with this problem. And generally when people deal with big expensive problems, they want that problem to keep happening, right? With the pharmaceutical industry, with all the stuff, they want to like fund the problem so that they can reap the benefits on the other end. And the same thing goes with these big cleanup projects. I mean, they're just a big money funnel, and they may only last 4 to 10 years, and everyone scoots out of town after they've pocketed half of it. Especially down here, there's a lot of corruption in sort of investment processes. Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see like how the corruption differs from down there and then up in Canada, right? Blackwater is big money up there as well, and we don't even have the option, right? You're not even allowed to put in gray water systems, right? So it's kind of nice as you get further and further down into Central America. It's like there's not a whole lot of people barking down your door saying, well, you can't do that. There's a lot more, opportunity for people to actually make substantial change on their individual lots if they can have them here. Whereas, in municipalities in Canada, there's no way you could really do these gray water systems. So it'd be interesting to see if we're going to see a change with that, with our current, political stories and whatnot. That's what's going on. Regenerative and permaculture, all of this is kind of on the cutting edge and cusp of breaking through to bigger populations. And I'm starting to see larger corporations reaching for these concepts because they know inherently they're good, and it's going to kind of like make them look good as well. We're going to see that in the political sphere as well. I just wonder how long it's going to take for that sort of thing to actually take hold. Will that happen in municipalities? Will that start on the fringes on small farms? Are they, quote unquote, they going to allow it? Because really, it does take, people's small actions and movements. And, it's just interesting. I'm not really throwing this out there for any sort of resolve, but just for conversation's sakes, like, are there bite-sized nuggets of these grassroots things happening in places where we think that they couldn't? That's open to anybody.
Yeah, when you have your municipalities in full control, it's like you take the choices and the sort of critical decision making and problem solving kind of ability out of people's hands, and you're kind of disinheriting something there, especially when people don't really have much choice over it, as you say, Lindsay. So there is a bit of a blessing there, you know, in these environments that we're in, seeing this kind of like, well, let's just do it ourselves, and let's learn how to do it, and let's do it as a community, and let's sort of reframe our brains about what this is, and let's take a different approach to solving these kind of problems. And once again, if those problems are being solved by someone else, then you don't get that opportunity, and you don't get that opportunity to learn something and grow and actually get involved on that level. One thing I see is that water creates relationships, you know. It goes beyond like the ecology of it. Like when we work on this level, we see how the water moves through the landscape and how it moves through the neighborhood, and how it moves through everyone's lives, and how it connects us all back together through our resources. And we see what kind of relationships we want to build with our environment and within our community itself. And it does, for me, it creates really beautiful conversations, and it creates conversations that I wouldn't normally have, where our lives become so disconnected when we live in the suburbs and everything's already kind of taken care of for us, and we don't really know how it's being taken care of. And we've got more important things to think about. Or do we? You know, that's the question. Do we have more important things to think about? I don't know. It's pretty important.
So my answer to that, Lindsay, would be motivation. So the companies will be motivated to change whenever there's money involved. So if there's a local solution and people start adopting the local solution, well, sooner or later they'll either try to squash that or try to adopt it for themselves. So that's where my answer would be. Try to motivate them better, to behave better.
I mean, if people adopt, even on a sort of corporation or municipal level, something that actually works, you know, is there any harm in that? Or is sort of like it inherently not going to work the same way it did in its concept or genesis once it's brought to a larger level? That's another question that I have sometimes. I'm like, okay, so when we do this work that was like obviously not functional on a municipal level, like they're not going to go door to door and fix every little, you know, fix up everyone's lives and really like work on that level. You know, when you apply it on a larger scale, I mean, is it only a matter of time that it's going to turn into something industrial and potentially ineffectual? And, you know, that's another one to think about. Like, I don't actually know myself, but
Sorry, you go ahead. Mine's a super tangent. Cormac, you might want to go first.
Well, so my thinking on that was, they would say, right, AI, we're going to lose all these jobs, but if you had a system where there were sensors in all these homes and they could detect, say, for example, something silly like a leak, well, that's a job for someone. Like AI can't go out and find the leak. So that's a community job where these systems are maintained by the community. It gives people employment, and it is like a more distributed way of doing it, rather than having like two engineers in one big plant and just chucking a lot of chemicals in. So if we're going to lose all these jobs, maybe this could be one of the new types of jobs.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a like refreshing perspective on that.
Yeah, Lindsay, what were you going to say?
Yeah, well, mine is, I was just thinking, you know, a lot of the travels that I've been doing, water storage, emergency water storage is like emergent and at the front of my brain all the time. And it's funny because, you know, back home in Calgary, what do I have for water storage? A couple of carboys of mountain water, right? Like that sort of thing. So it's like not necessarily this massive focus when I'm living in the city center, which is kind of sad and needs to change. But as I go further down south, you know, now we went to Mexico, where there's so much microplastics in the water systems there. You can't drink it. They have water storage on their ceilings, like on the roof, where they're getting, you know, pumped water in Jalisco. Then we get down to Chiapas, where the water, the pipes of the water there are so toxic you can't drink the water out of the pipes. But they have a lot of storage systems again in Mexico on the rooftops, and then they have these solar heaters and whatnot. But we get farther down into these volcano lands, and it's just rock, right? So for water storage, I'm always asking people, like, what are you doing for water storage? Some of them are doing, I don't see this underground cistern stuff happening. And most of these places are tropical areas where they have huge amounts of water and then dry seasons. But there's not this concentration on water storage at all. And if there is, again, there are these above ground tanks that maybe they're pumping into from their municipality, or they're pumping into from somewhere. So they have this small amount of water storage. But the reason why I'm going off on this massive tangent, I guess, is to talk to you about that sort of like emergency water storage in your climate, in these climates down here. And, you know, why are there cisterns? Are we just not seeing them? What's your experience with the local people in water storage with that wet, dry season?
Yeah, people really don't have a lot of backup. I mean, where we live here, there's quite a lot of springs farther up the watershed, and those are collected in very large municipal cisterns. And then that's distributed out from there, and everyone's got, as you say, their above ground little storage containers, their own little mini cisterns or tanks sitting around the property, and usually gravity fed into the house or whatever. And that water, it might be 1,000 liters, might be 1,500 or 2,000 liters tops. That lasts, 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Maybe a week if you're being really, careful about it. But yeah, basically no one's really prepared for a serious drought here. And we're so lucky that we actually have springs that can feed the amount of mouths and sort of houses that we have here. And so the bigger issue we're seeing is like, whoa, wait a minute. The water source is either staying the same or getting more scarce, and the population is increasing. Like, that's bad, And
That's what we're
yeah, that's not good. So looking at like clean water to use in the houses, as a different theme instead of like the wastewater itself, because you can only use wastewater for so much as far as I can, put together. I've never drank and I've never put this water back into my body again. At least directly. I'm sure on some sort of larger ecological level, yes, maybe, but not like on the systems we're building on our. So yeah, you need some really fresh water, and you always need a bit of that, as you guys are saying. And here, basically, I think you were alluding to this, Lindsay. A lot of times we use in places where there's more intermittent rain, or more frequent rain. You can store water from your roof and it replenishes regularly enough, and you can calculate that pretty easily, how big of a cistern you need for the amount of water you use based on the frequency of rainfall. But if you do that calculation here, it's a nightmare, because you've got 6 months with no rain. And so how big would a cistern actually have to be to collect all the water you need from rainfall? And generally speaking, these cisterns range from 120,000 liters up to a gigaliter of water that you need to store. And then when you do the math on how much it would cost to build something like that, to be able to store it in a way where you can use it to shower and to drink and to wash your food with and to cook with, we're talking inappropriately expensive. Like, most people can't afford that, and I wouldn't spend my money on it in the first place. It's like, unless I absolutely had to, but no one has those resources available on a home scale. So what do you do about it? Well, you plant more trees, right? We we try to replenish the amount of water that's collecting into our watersheds. And the only way to do that is to increase the vegetation on the landscape. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that the water that is being produced from our watershed is being sunken back in the best places possible. And some of that water is the water that comes in. A big part of the water and a big part of the problem is the water that's coming out of people's houses, right? That needs to go back into the ground. That water can't get shot right down into the lake again. It doesn't do anything. It just goes into there, it pollutes the lake, and sure, some of it evaporates back into the air, and then it settles back down again in the form of either precipitation, either a form of rain or other forms of precipitation like condensation and other forms. The trees definitely collect that back in. But the best way for that water to cycle back into the ground and to replenish our watershed and to make sure this fresh spring water is being produced is to make sure there's a greater amount of water seeping into the landscape at a higher point on the landscape itself, right? And so when we see all these houses that are up on the hills, and they're all this water is being sent in from these springs higher up in these cisterns, and then from the houses it goes into a pipe that sends it as far down as possible. And then if you get the munis involved, they make even bigger pipes that send it even farther down the hill and send it even farther away from the watershed. And then if you take that process even further, a big company is going to come in and say, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to create a sewage pumping system that's going to collect all the water from all of the towns around the lake, and we're going to pump it out of the lake basin because it's harming the lake. It's bad for the lake. And these guys, this was a big thing, and it got shot down. There was big company, and this is kind of alluding back to what you were saying, Cormac. Big company wanted to put in a massive pumping system, an underwater sewage pumping system that would collect all the water from each town, all the wastewater, and then pump it back over the basin on the lowest point, which is over across the way from us in San Lucas, where there's also a lot of big plantations growing rubber, and farther up from there, coffee and other things, and sugarcane. They want to actually bring it all the way to where they produce sugarcane and use the water that otherwise would once again be replenishing our watershed here and send it like, I don't even know, 300 kilometers in the other direction. And it's just sort of like, it's astounding how far these processes can go if you're thinking in the wrong way about it, right?
I'm surprised they have a system pump it into the volcano.
Yeah, maybe they just pump it into the volcano.
We want
more sensible than what these guys are actually thinking. So I'll give you points for that one, Carver. I'm going to actually bring that up next time we're on the board. Guys, have you thought about it? Geothermal heat? All that nasty water down into one of these beds. See what happens. Because no one really knows what they're doing, like on that scale here. I'm astounded by some of the ideas that are proposed. But I guess at the end of the day, it's like everyone's kind of freaking out because there isn't a direct solution that people can devise for these towns that we're living in here. We all see the potential impending doom, the ecological sort of fallout that could happen with this lake, as all of this discharge keeps dumping into it. The eutrophication comes in stronger every year. There's more die-off. The water gets a bit sicker. There's less oxygen. Every time that happens, we get closer to an actual fallout event where the lake will actually just die, and that's what happened with a lake nearby us in another part of Guatemala. Too much contamination, too much excess going into it, and it shocked the system. And now it's just algae growing in it. And if you look at the water, it's just this weird sort of nuclear green color. It's not like it's, 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 it's,
It's not nuclear.
Yeah. We lost them there.
The government might have cut him off.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
He was in a good flow there too.
He was in a good. Yeah, well, maybe he'll come back and we can queue him up to let people know like how to get a hold of him. I know he works on his own. He's got his own companies and whatnot. But for people that want to support like the work of cleaning the water before it hits Lake Atitlan, there's a lot of work to be done. There you are. That's great.
Hey.
I just switched over.
That's okay. We're back. We figured you may have gotten kicked off by the government.
You guys stopped me from my extremely long tangent again.
But yeah, we just have like a few minutes left, so I just wanted you to have an opportunity to like mention how people can kind of like get a hold of you and see the work that you're doing or support the work that you're doing. And yeah, if you could give us a little wrap up for that.
Oh yes, I will. So I'm working with a really amazing organization here. What? Sorry. There's Neil. There's our man Neil.
How's it going?
How are you getting on?
Yeah,
I'm babysitting today while Jer gets to have all the fun.
Oh, that's
It's a
good.
very there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely not.
All right, I'll let Jer get back to it. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, I'm glad you cut.
Right.
I'm glad you stepped in at the end there, Neil. Just to wrap things up, I'm working with a really amazing NGO called Water for Life. We do a lot of our work through these guys. So they bring my kind of crazy pitch idea, whatever, to a scale with other organizations that, that are willing to like look into these projects and want to help and fund this kind of stuff. But it takes the administration and the sort of devotion and courage and never-ending office hours of this team at Water for Life to make sure this stuff can actually happen. So I want to give them a big shout out. And they do have a donation page if people are interested in helping with the Agua Sana project. I will share a link for you, Cormac, after this, if that's how. And yeah, check out our. We're going to be doing. Neil posts a lot of videos about the work that we do, but we'll also be hosting regular permaculture courses. Some of them are one-day courses, also longer ones. Go in and look at all the cool little projects we're doing, sometimes big projects. And we have a really cool internship opportunity. People want to really figure this stuff out. We're there to show it. So I'll share links to all the websites and I'll let you guys do the rest. It's so nice to meet you though, Cormac, and thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, I'd love to get you on for a full interview if you were up for that. Just yourself. And then as well, for me, the takeaway is you're in Guatemala, I'm here in Ireland, and London, Canada. The issues are the same. We in Loch Ness we have a problem with blue-green algae, they call it. So the waterway's been destroyed. So these issues are universal, and like no matter where you are in the world, it's strange that's occurring. Like it's not. These are universal things. Universal solutions.
Right. It's actually true. At the end of the day, it's the same problem, and the solution is probably down the same vein as well. So, yeah, let's keep the conversation going, Cormac. I'm to hear more about what's going on across the pond.
That'd be great.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'm raising we didn't get to discuss about the PDC that you went on. Do you want to touch on that briefly? Just Lindsay or Jeremy? Yeah, just the PDC just did.
Actually, I want to hear Lindsay's take on it. I haven't talked to you. So they had to get out of here like pretty quickly after the course, so we haven't. It's great to see you. Tell us about it, Lindsay.
Yeah, we definitely had to jet really fast down to El Salvador and through Honduras and down to Nicaragua. So that was quite the journey for sure. But Yeah, it was amazing. Like, it was a lot of work, and we created kind of on the fly for sure. So it was kind of an experiment for all of us to be creating on the fly, getting a group of people together, seeing how, as humans, we could organize ourselves in a way that's like cohesive enough to run this course. And fortunately, we had, 12 to 15 people that were there on a regular basis, which I thought was outstanding. From beginning to end, and the types of projects that they were creating was fusion of storytelling as well. So we had a lot of different dynamics going on. We had like an internship experience, hands-on, learning how to find topography and lay the lines, and then new design models where we're like, well, now we're going to take a drone shot, we're going to design on the fly. So I feel like it was a nebula of ideas for all of us to really just throw so much on the table and just be like, does this work? And, how do we make this work? But then also we had all these people. And I think the people is really what made it, in their willingness to flow and their willingness to contribute and learn from. So I really put a lot of my focus into these people as well. It's like, who are you? And what are you coming to me with? And I think we learned a lot through talking to each other about, what do I need and in what area of the world am I am? And then how does that direct the conversation as well? So it was a nice practice, definitely in flow for all of us, and in that act of creativity, which I think was really what the spark of doing this project was all about, right? It's like, what actually happens when you get humans together? We didn't have this this is what we're going to do, it's going to look like this, where a standard course is very much like that, very rigid, kind of in a box, and looks like this way. So I really enjoyed that about the project, where it's like, what can it look like? And then we learned through our experience of what else is possible. Because I think that, things came up through the experience where it's like, okay, well, we've done it this way this time, but how could you do it next time? And also integrate not just what we have to offer them, but what other people that are coming to us have to offer, the new story or what we're trying to create. So I found a lot of magic in that, and I really enjoyed that co-creative aspect. And that's what really brought me into the project in the first place. It's like, what happens when you just get people to create together and, open up? So that performative aspect of the storytelling was really important. Because if people aren't strong in their voice or don't feel confident speaking in front of a group, they're not going to have the capability to go out there and express their ideas with confidence. So I think that piece was really helpful in terms of getting people to a place where they're like, oh, maybe I will express my ideas. Maybe I do have the courage to stand up and speak and say something different. So I thought that was a really beautiful result of what we did. And yeah, I love the experience. The place is beautiful, Neil. Thank you again for having us out there. Oh, the two mezcals is so nice. And it was just it was just like going to your friend's place and staying there for a few weeks, and everybody got on hanging out with you
That's
guys.
what it was. It wasn't like that. That's what it was.
That's actually what it was. I'm impressed. How many signups did we have? 2 or 3 days before the course started?
2 or 3 days before the course started, we had one sign up. Because she's in our online, she's taking our online program. And then me and Aaron did a couple of speaking events, and you and Human sort of went around the lake dropping off flyers and talking to people, and we had 18 people
by the end of it.
Which is
that's impressive. I was very concerned.
It was amazing. Amazing. And then we had tons of people as well following along live on Instagram. I couldn't believe how many views the live class were getting on Instagram. Which just shows you everyone's oh, no one's gonna watch a permaculture class on Instagram. People want to watch cat videos or something. But it's people were showing us that this is what they want. There's an appetite for this, and I think everyone involved in it had it was you guys left so soon after it finished. Josh kind of hung around for. You guys missed an incredible trip to the beach, by the way.
Oh,
That's
True. You were missed.
We went to that coffee farm where they're doing the precision regenerative agriculture. Cormac, I got to get Francisco on this podcast with you. He was amazing. He showed everyone how he's doing this. He gives a tour of his like large scale coffee farm where he's doing this like super magros. So they do sap analysis and like really high precision regenerative agriculture. But his place is phenomenal. So we went there first, and then we went down to the beach, and it was just an amazing like trip and way to wrap the whole thing up. And we did like a boat trip on the mangroves, which as well is just like talk about just letting nature be the teacher when you're out on a mangrove, seeing the turtles swim around the place. So I was like, okay, we're including this as like part of the course next time.
Oh yeah.
And Human, how did you find it?
Oh, I loved it. I think one of the great things for me as someone who'd never been there before was just all of the different pieces of land that I got to see. Jeremy brought us down to a project where it was basically a vacant lot. Like, hey, this is kind of square one for a project. Like, how are we going to make this happen? And then we also got to go to other projects further up the hill where it was like, this was this guy's legacy he'd worked on for 8 years, and this is what it looks like from 8 years of success. And then our kind of grounding point was the permaculture farm, Granjkin, where we got to see everything and how it evolves, how it changes over time. I feel like where Jeremy's at with the farm right now almost feels like the 4th or 5th iteration of it. Like it's gone through a lot of transformation from what it first started out as a jungle lot. Then bringing on the story aspect, that was really interesting in that as a permaculture designer, it kind of adds a little more creative play in there because you can create all of your artistic renditions and what the numbers and breakdowns are, but then there's how you're going to present it. You know, there's so many different ways to present a story. So I think that really helped put in how do I want to present it compared to how will people see it presented. Yeah, that's kind of my wrap up gift.
Yeah.
Okay, stuff. I'm raising mustard.
Like it.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah, you should definitely. This was a special one. I think, learning about how to create a story that you're trying to tell is super important. I learned a lot from it, and we're always going. I think a big thing for us is we're always going to add some kind of special spice to the sauce. Who's around that can provide something that you might not know is needed in your PDC? Maybe you'll be around for the next one, Cormac. That would be awesome. I hope Lindsay and Human will be back again soon and put on another one.
Great stuff. Thanks very much,
Come
Jeremy.
to Nicaragua.
Yeah, come on down.
Yeah. Guys, I'll include Jeremy's links there. I'm also offering clarity calls at the minute. Just if you're not sure what to do with your property, you want to engage a designer or whatever, you just want to know what to do next. I'm offering like 1 hour calls with a follow-up report. Lindsay, are you offering designs at the minute?
Yeah, right now we're doing 2 private hospitals in Indiana, and we're going to be doing like mental wellness gardens, CSA gardens for their food bank. We're working with the First Nations project up in the Haida Gwaii territory on Vancouver Island. So that's going to be more about bringing people back home. They just got their land back given to them by the government. So we're going to be working on that project. And then I'm also doing the Boat Barn, which is an urban design mixing women's empowerment with culinary arts. So those are the current projects that I'm working on right now down here while I'm traveling. So yeah, still designing away and learning how to live abroad and work with choppy internet connections. But I'm glad this worked out.
So if you want to work with Lindsay, go to permaculturecanada.world. You get all our information there. Guys, thanks very much. And for the audience listening, thank you. a particular shout out to the one viewer that's been watching on Twitch the entire way through. This was the first time we streamed on Twitch. So for that viewer over there, thanks very much. And for all our other viewers as well, thank you. And we'll see if not next week, next month. Cheers.
Sounds good.
All right. You guys.
So,